All right, we're back. I'm Ron,
I'm Zach.
and welcome to the second Widetrack podcast. Zach, why don't you give people a little rundown on what we're trying to do here?
Well, we thought this would be a really great opportunity to kind of introduce a lot more about the band and, about us as people without being so, descriptive. I mean, there's plenty of things and instances where we've talked about our influences and our processes, and there's a whole blog about the band, and there's plenty of posts about it, but we thought that this would be a great time to summarize and kind of connect on a little bit clear of a level.
Yeah, one of the big things that serves as a motivation for this band is we like to inspire people, even if they're not musicians. There's a lot of creative walks of life, and even going so far as to people who maybe feel like that there's something they're not doing that they want to be doing, or even going a step further back, there's just a feeling like something's missing and they don't even know what it is. But maybe some of our conversations of what we end up talking about will inspire you to think about some of those things.
And don't get us wrong, we don't expect people to say, "Oh, finally, that's what I've been looking for. Now I can
Yeah.
pursue my lost dream of being a professional musician."
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen nearly as much as somebody saying, and slowly over time just kind of letting it sit in their thoughts and making, decisions that, help them live their life to the fullest, or,
Yeah, pursuing your
be happy.
Your path, and that's different for everybody. So, anyhow, as far as our own path, or whatever you want to call it, goes, maybe you've caught some of our YouTube videos of influences when we would pick a band or a movie or a book or something each week, and we would talk about it.
Every once in a while, we had some guests on those episodes, which if we do end up finding anybody that we are really, digging what they're doing, I think that we will definitely find time to have them either on our lovely podcast here or dedicate a episode of influences to them, just as we have for a few other people that we encountered early in our video career, I suppose.
Absolutely. So we'll just give you a quick little rundown of what we've been doing lately. In May of 2018, we released the third Widetrack album, Widetrack 3, and it's the first recording that Zach was ever featured on as a musician. And Zach came into the band a new musician, so the music was already written when Zach came into the band, and he recorded the bass parts on the album, did a great job, but he has since become a lot more of a composer, so he and I have been working on new songs for the tentatively titled Widetrack 4, which we're just kind of calling it that right now. I'm not
The only
sure.
reason, it's of my belief that the only reason it's not going to be called Widetrack 4 is because Chicago, 30 exists, and we're not going to top that.
Yeah, we're not.
But
Chicago's got the market cornered on the Roman numeral album titles.
But I'm just saying, if we were to named it Widetrack 4 and said that's what it's going to be final, it'd be no going back. It's like it's got to be a staple.
So that's the working title, and so we have about 15, 16 new songs we're kind of developing right now, and
that may sound like a lot, but believe me, you get more and more picky the more and more that you write, and it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. You start to find things that you didn't notice before and say, "Oh, I want to do that," or "No, I want to do that," or this or that, and
so that at this stage we're planning on putting out one song a month starting in January, and kind of trying to adapt to the new age of the way music's being released on a more consistent basis. a song a month or a couple songs every couple months or whatever. Bands are starting to, the idea is that you want to be kind of in people's news feeds and stuff on Spotify, coming out with new stuff.
And, not
in the
to
digital
sound all
age.
corporate and stuff, but really I think it's just more interesting than having a whole bunch of songs all at once. It gets each of those songs time to develop, and when you have an album, every once in a while, songs that are like the 8th out of the 16th or 12th track, or just songs that are towards the last third, tend to get forgotten, and I think this is a way to bring all the songs that we have worked really hard on to people's attention, and not make it feel like you've only got time for 4 or 5, and the rest of the album you're just gonna have to say, okay, that's neat and all, but these 4 or 5 songs are at the beginning, so they're what I've been focused on.
Yeah, we lyrically we're kind of developing a bit of almost like a series where each song is like an episode in a series that's we're starting to come up with some pretty cool ideas for an overview of a modern time social media thriller, I guess. More to come on that, but
Yeah,
we're
the
excited
idea.
about it.
I haven't really seen any of the bands that I listen to go about releasing music in this way, mostly because the bands that I listen to only put out albums once every 14 years. You know who you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't really agree a lot of the times with bands that say, oh, people that put out a record a year are just selling out and all that. And I think with our situation being together so much and really taking music as a career, we have enough time to dedicate to just writing and developing these songs. So, I think it all works out in the end. And but, we'll have to see how it goes. I really hope, most of all, that it's convenient for anyone listening to kind of just get something new every month.
Yeah, so I agree with that. There's something that's really like I said, like a series. You each week you get one episode, or in our case, each month you'll get one song. At the end of the year, then we'll put that in an album or CD format and release it like that, and hopefully this will allow us to just kind of stay out there and stay in people's faces a bit more. And the pressure of doing a whole collection of songs, working on a collection of songs at once, sometimes the songs can get compromised. But when you're just doing one, you're really working that song to its fullest in the pre-production and the production stages of recording, and
And listening to an album too, it's like listening to an opera almost. It's like it's not really the desired format for a collection of songs. It's, I believe, truly the desired format for a series of songs that closely link together. Like there are some albums which are perfect examples of albums, and then there are some albums that are really just good for how each individual song on it is outstanding, And so when people say, oh, the form of the album is dying, I don't disagree. But at the same time, I just think that it's always been a different topic of discussion, album versus collection of songs. And that people that write entire collections of hour-long, masterpieces are totally different from songwriters who just like to package all their stuff in one single unit,
So yeah, absolutely. There's this is a new thing for us. So with 3 albums out, it'll be an interesting kind of experiment to see how this pans out. So, so Zach, you've been writing these new songs on guitar and some bass and stuff like that. How's this experience feel for you the first time writing music?
Well, I gotta say, writing it is fairly easy. It's we divvy up a lot of the parts, and just whoever's best for a certain part, it's like if there's something that involves a big stretch of the hands, I
He's
can do
got
that
a-
one.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of a advantage on
But
me there.
yeah, it's like we try and split the writing as straight down the middle as we can, not for any sort of ego sake or whatever, but really just for the sake of having it be easier on both of us and making sure that we can focus on the things that we value the most. Other than that, though, I think recording can get kind of nerve-wracking, when you go into a professional studio and you're on edge about not making a single mistake and you've got all these people whose time you're using up. It can feel really pressuring, but, after a little while, believe me, all gets easier and you focus on the music and what's important.
Yeah,
and that feels
that's-
great too.
That's brings up a good point about. I once heard somebody say that self-consciousness is the enemy of good art, and it's kind of funny because when you go to record, you want to be perfect, you want to get everything, but when you're just playing and you're in the zone, you're not thinking about that. So it's kind of an ironic twist that you can actually make your playing worse by focusing so much on perfection rather than, I guess the whole idea is getting into a state of flow, as they say, where you're just in the zone, quote unquote, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time, and you're always fighting against the clock in the studio. You want to get things moving along. You don't want to be that guy that's holding things up. I think a lot of times it's that these things can be remedied by just good planning and understanding from the outset that, hey, each of us we want each guy to feel really good about his parts, and we're just going to have to budget the time and money for doing right by everybody, make sure that everybody feels their
Yeah,
contribution
absolutely, yeah.
is what they want to say and how they want to say it.
But I will add that has been a long time, which when I say long time, I mean since we were recording Widetrack 3, since I felt that type of studio anxiety. Most of the times, especially now that we've got our own home recording studio, we are able to do all the things ourselves and call the shots and, spend as long as we need on it, with the only cost being our time, which is, I believe, much better on one's head, But yeah, at this point, it's been long enough. We've been writing these songs for about a year, and it's just natural, There's no sort of shyness or whatever where, you wouldn't think that you'd be embarrassed to show an idea to somebody else, but it can be kind of hard, and at this point, it's well beyond that, and I think that's gonna show in the album. And really look forward to it.
There's a lot of overcoming of the personal hang-ups and stuff when you're working with other people. It's communication is always the key factor. You want to be able to communicate, but sometimes you have to learn people's language. Not everybody speaks the same artistic language, so to speak, like creative language or whatever. One of the things that was a big move for me personally was when I've written things by myself up to this point, and so there's not the running something by somebody factor, which is a very difficult thing for a lot of artists to deal with, is having to get permission, so to speak, from somebody they're working with to, is this any good? And sometimes there's a little bit of pushback. Fortunately for us, there's chemistry here, and usually when one of the other says, that can be better, or it's on the money, and you're not working at cross purposes, you want your eventual vision to be the same thing, and it's one thing that I've learned from playing with different musicians is that you can really like the way somebody plays, you can really like them as people, but when you get into a creative situation, you have different desires of creativity, or different influences, or different what you want to do, different goals. And it can make it really hard to get on the same page, even with the best intentions.
Yeah, very briefly, I'd just like to say that it is almost a miracle that there are a set of writing partners, and I don't mean to be egotistical, but we have the same visions and the same bands that we are influenced by, and all the same, we respect the stuff that each other likes, and it's not out of any sort of compromising factor. I genuinely enjoy the music that, my dad listens to, and vice versa.
Mm.
And I think this is, one of the rarest things ever to find, because a lot of the times, you hear it growing up. You hear it everywhere. You're going to have to work with people that you don't want to work with. And so having a scenario where that's completely false is amazing. It's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to either one of our artistic creative outlets. So
yeah, there was definitely the initial joy of, wow, I get to play music with my son, and that's awesome. And eventually you start, okay, there's concerns about if we're going to, whatever we would end up doing, it wouldn't even matter if it was just as a hobby and just for fun together. It could have been like, well, he's into this kind of music and I'm into that kind of music, and we'll just play some covers, or we'll just have some fun with it. But it immediately became apparent that this was one of those rare things where there's a genuine lining up of things. And so you look at some of the cynicism that might come our way, like, okay, yeah, okay, that's cute. You and your dad are playing together, but there's a generational gap and all these things. And I think we just want to kind of flip that around and say, that these things don't matter when you have chemistry, and so let the music do the talking, and the haters are going to hate, and the people that get it will enjoy it, hopefully.
I won't lie, it's been a while since I've heard that one, but I totally agree. Kind of to change it up a little bit, I just briefly want to talk about the importance of being influenced. It's like, I know plenty of people will tell you, it's like, I don't really do any cover songs, or I don't learn anybody else's music, and I would say that I'm not really influenced by anything. And, I gotta say, this is a little bit of a disappointment to hear sometimes, because I feel there's always something to be gathered from the musicians that have come before and all that, even if it's the most obvious choices. Even if it's the most obvious choices, like, say, if you're into jazz music, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, if you're into pop music, Michael Jackson, whatever, even if it's the most, of course, choices for an influence, there's something to be said about passing the kind of knowledge of one generation to another, even if it's not, not as applicable as it is in real life. I think there is something to be gained from it in music. It's like, don't make the same mistakes. Don't sell yourself short. Just the fundamental things. And, as far as like musical creativity goes, if you're not going to pick what you're influenced by, then it's just going to be subconscious anyways. Most of the original ideas in forms of melodies and chord progressions and all the technical music stuff has long since been written and conceived. And the most personal thing that you can do is try and combine all the things that you find musically just interesting or beautiful or moving. And
that includes your own musicality as well. There's might be something that you do that, for instance, if you're a singer and you're writing vocals to a song and you're humming, you're crooning, you're scatting, whatever it is, there might be something that you find to your own ear that, ooh, I like the way my voice sounds.
Absolutely.
Then that's going to be included in this melting pot of influence for you. And
Yeah,
that's not something to shy away from. That's something to embrace.
Of course, it's like really, I think the point that I'm really trying to make is don't be any sort of ashamed of what you like to listen to or what you like to play like. Those aren't always the same thing, but you know what I mean. Be truthful in the arts and the things that you do, because if you aren't, then it's just going to come out as generic or strained, and that does not usually end well. So, we've talked about this plenty of times. We've got discussions in our episodes of Influences. The entire show is about how we love these bands, and, we do some brief histories and all that, and kind of gives you a context on what makes them so cool to us. But, just wanted to say that it's a pretty big deal to us, Influences anyways. I'm sure you've seen in some of the other videos the countless posters I have on my ceiling. It's only because my walls are filled, and sometimes I look at them and I say, oh, where's that band or that band or that band? So it only goes to show that, all these musical places can only meet up within you. And that is a really beautiful thing that should be harnessed.
Yeah, it's funny. It's you make me think of Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush. He was a big fan of Keith Moon, drummer from The Who, and he talked about learning Keith Moon's drum parts, and he just loved The Who's music. And then it occurred to him one day that when it came time for him to write drum parts for the bands that he was playing in, he realized that his temperament and his sense of order and efficiency on the drums was not quite so Keith Moonish. And he said, this guy was my biggest influence, but I realized I wasn't cut out to be a drummer like that. I basically just took the element that I could use and applied it to what I was doing. And I think that's the thing, a lot of time I'll listen to a lot of these bands, and I'll hear a certain singer or a guitar player, and I love what they do, but I can't see myself doing what they do. But you can still extract the spirit of that and the lesson about what informs what they do. And a lot of time that is just, it can be reduced to a simple maxim, which is just, self-actualization. And a lot of that is really confronting those things of, when you're young, you want to copy, and you find the things that work and the things that don't work, and you have to really be courageous and honest about those things. It's really important to come to that place where you know your skill set without an ego influencing what you decide to do with it. And that can take years, and for some people, it can be pretty natural. But anyhow, that's just one of the things that comes to mind when you're talking about that stuff.
Yeah, it's, I think, out of things that are most important to us, the topics of, influences and our views on how the music industry is not so clear cut as many people will tell you that it is. It's lost my train of thought. I feel like a fool. But anyways, those things are the important things to us, and in a podcast like this are very much what we'd like to touch on most. However, I feel in the last little bit of time that we have, why don't we just do a quick rundown on the history of the band for anybody who doesn't want to read the extensive blog, which you should read it. It's very good. But,
If
just
you
in
do
case.
say so yourself.
I didn't write it, though, so I can. But, yeah. I'll let you start it off because I was, well, we'll get to that.
Okay. Well, a lot of this is covered in the introductory blog.
Which go read it, by the way.
Yeah, actually, if you are interested in getting notifications from us and announcements and blogs and stuff, you can go to widetrackmusic.com.
We'll have that all linked in the description of this video.
Yep, subscribe to our list. And
it's
a lot of this stuff is covered in the initial series of getting to know you emails that we send out. But basically, I've been a musician all my life, and started when I was 12 years old. Was a drummer, grew up as a drummer, played a little guitar and stuff, always kind of had an interest in writing songs, writing lyrics, but I was mostly a drummer with a closet desire to be a singer-songwriter. And Zach was born in 2004 when we were living out in Georgia, and I decided I'm going to try to get my feet wet playing a little bit open mics, acoustic stuff. So I got to suck in front of complete strangers, and not in front of people in my hometown who only had me kind of in this narrow frame as just a drummer. And so when Zach was born, my dad convinced us to move back to Michigan. And we lived with him for a little while, and unfortunately he got cancer and passed away about a year later. And it really struck me, in a deep way to, like, man, take advantage of. You can't make excuses for why you're not doing the things you really want to do deep down. So that's when I just decided I'm making an album, and that ended up being the first Widetrack album. And after that experience, it just snowballed, and put the second one out in 2009, and then a few years kind of went between that one and the recent one here. A lot of stuff happened, which you can read about on the blog, but it ended up being a good thing that the third one was delayed because Zach came into it.
I was finally just about old enough to, know how to play bass and have an understanding for music. Or I was really a guitar player, but they said, what we need is a bass player. And I knew there was no getting out of that one. Well, I didn't know, but I know now.
Well, it's funny. Zach started off as a drummer. The first thing he said he wanted was a drum set, and so we got him a little electronic drum kit for Christmas, and he paid for half of it himself, which I thought was a really responsible thing for his age. And from there, just he started getting the musical bug more and more, and we played together. And then next thing you know, he's laying down the bass tracks for the third Widetrack album. And so after that experience, Zach really got more and more into it, and now it's like, as you said many times, you wish you could go back and redo your bass tracks on that. And that's the same story with just about every musician in the world. Or if I knew then what I know now. But that's the point of doing things is advancing. So.
Anyways, we've got all this done, and it's all led up to how we're all writing stuff now together, and it's really great place for the band, and I don't know, we are very, very excited for what is to come in the future.
So anyway, we just it's really important to us that we connect with like-minded, kindred spirits out there. Those we've met only thus far, it's just been wonderful. It's you really start to realize that, wow, that we're not so strange. There's a lot of people out there that are really into music and whatever their artistry is, and they're deep thinkers, they're free thinkers, and this is all stuff that we're deeply interested in. So we're always learning, always trying to apply it to what we do. And I think that's more than anything what anybody that you get into what they do is that they have just a certain point of view or a certain way of looking at things, or a way of creating things that only they do. And to get to that point as a creator or artist or whatever, you have to be brave, and you have to really dig deep to find what that is in yourself. And so talking to other people out there that just inspires us to to see what they're doing, and to see their courageous convictions of their artistry. So that's kind of what we're about, and that's what we're just trying to do here. And hopefully this stuff will be of some use to you guys, or at least a little inspiring or food for thought or whatever.
Maybe you just find it interesting. Who knows? I mean, it's all up to you, I suppose. But I suppose that does it. We hope you've enjoyed.
Yep, we welcome your feedback. And
Absolutely, yeah.
We're going to put all of our information in the description, and please subscribe if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel or to our podcast here, wherever it may end up, iTunes or wherever else. Leave us a review or leave us some suggestions or some things you want to hear us talk about, things
Absolutely.
you might want to know about, anything we can do to help.
Anything you have to add as well to these topics, we find very interesting to read, and next time around we always consider them when we're talking. So
thanks so much, and
until next time,
keep on rocking.